Good evening. We're going to call to order the regular council meeting of the District of Sechelt for Wednesday, September 18th. And first, is there anybody who would like to indicate a declaration of conflict for any of the items this evening? Yes, Councillor Lamb will be stepping out for item 8.2, yes. Thank you. Any others? All right, we are going to make a couple of changes to the agenda. 3.1 delegation will not be here this evening. And we would like to move 10.1, since we have somebody to present on the community forest. We're going to move 10.1 up after number 6. Any other changes? Number 6 is business arising from the minutes. So I'd like a motion to adopt the amendment as amended. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Mr. Downey, would you like to come forward? And Ms. Rogers.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I'd like to introduce you to Bill Downey. Bill is the owner, creative director, and brand strategist for Pear Advertising and Design in Sechelt, and he led the task force for the Sechelt community brand. I'm assuming this is already on. First up, I'm going to explain a little bit about what this project was all about and what a brand is and what it isn't. And then Bill will take over and he will introduce the community brand to you. To be successful, whether you're a business or you're a community, you must distinguish yourself from everyone else. And that's what this project is about. It's about finding an identity for Sechelt that is our one unique selling proposition that sets us apart from all of the other communities. And that's what the art of branding is all about. So, why did we do it? Because, as I said, we want to distinguish Sechelt from all of the other communities. And we want to make Sechelt the destination of choice for visitors, but also showcase Sechelt as a desirable place to live, to work, to invest, to visit, to raise a family. And it's about who we are, and it's a little bit about who we are not. So it's a project to determine what Sechelt wants to be known for, and then find ways to promote and protect that identity. We can also use our brand to accelerate economic development. If we create a more consistent and coordinated approach with all organizations working toward economic development initiatives so that the brand is reflected and represented through our citizens, our external organizations, our businesses, our events, our street banners. In everything that we do, we're reflecting our brand and we're making a name for Sechelt. We have Skrido doing economic development for the coast, and we have Sunshine Coast Tourism doing our tourism. But what we want is for people to go, oh yeah, the Sunshine Coast, that's where Sechelt is. So we want to stand out a little bit. It's great that we think regionally, but we also need to think locally. And we want to get everybody on the same page and paddling in the same direction and really focus our efforts. We also want to enhance community pride. Having an identifiable brand that we're proud of does a lot for your community in terms of pride and your sense of well-being. Not a good feature.
There it is.
Thank you. So what is a brand? A brand is not a logo. A logo is one piece of your brand. Your brand is what people think, and it's what they feel when you say Sechelt. It evokes a feeling, and it evokes a sense of connection to the place. A successful community brand is built on a promise that you deliver once people arrive. If you think about Napa Valley, you think wine. If you think about Nashville, they own the country music brand. Las Vegas owns the adult playground brand. Las Vegas was a miserable little city in the middle of nothing. They have no ocean, they have no mountains, they have no outdoor recreation to speak of, unless you don't mind to go for a walk in 40-degree heat. It was the municipality that came up with what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. And that grew, and so they built their brand around that. And it grew with more casinos and more shows. And it's something that they revisit every few years. They revisited it during the last recession. Is this brand still going to work for us? Will people still come? They found that people were gambling less. And so more shows started coming so they could continue to work on their brand. So it's a little bit, your brand is your niche, but it's also a little bit who you aspire to be. You identify your brand, and then you allow that to grow and to build. So we started off with a brand task force. This amazing group of dedicated citizens and business people got together over several months. We met in the evenings. Between meetings, they went back to their families, their colleagues, their neighbors, and they talked about what we talked about at our meetings, and they brought everybody's visions back again. And we're really, really proud of the work that all of these people have done to contribute to Seashelt's community brand. The work began with the graffiti wall project. We put posters up all over the community, and people told us what they love about Seashelt. It was citizens and visitors participated in this, and they told us what they love and how they are connected to Seashelt. Their comments formed the basis of our selling proposition. So how do you build a brand from that? We took all of the information that we got from those posters, and we transcribed it, we categorized it. We had hundreds of comments. We analyzed them all. We tried to understand what they were talking about and what was important to them. We calculated how many times people said the word beaches. We love our beaches. And what that meant. Is it really about sitting on the beach, or is it about our love of nature? We also reviewed our official community plan, our integrated community sustainability plan, because those documents are based on community feedback. Even if you look back to the vision document from 2007, there's a statement in there, and later you're going to go, oh yeah, look at that. The statement is, the arts are often overlooked. If nurtured, they can provide social and economic benefits while acting as a cornerstone in our ongoing efforts to revitalize the downtown. So back in 2007, we were looking for an identity, and we recognized the arts. Bill's going to talk more about the arts in a few minutes. So we took all of that information, and we listened. And we thought about what people were trying to tell us. And what we heard is outdoor lifestyle is really important to us. And I don't mean just recreation. I mean full-on outdoor lifestyle. We love being outdoors, and we love nature. We are proud of it. We are protective of it. Sustainability is extremely important to us, and we will get in the face of anybody who puts our nature and our outdoor lifestyle at risk. Also, in Seashelt, we are very spirited people. We are extremely passionate about everything that we do. But we are also very peaceful. If you think about that feeling that you get when you've had to be in the city and you cross the Chapman Bridge and you know you're home, and you just feel all of the tension go away, because Seashelt just gives you that sense of peace. We also heard a lot about the people in Seashelt, and every community, hands down, will say, oh, but the people here are so nice. The people in Seashelt talked about their neighbors, their family. So many people said, I met the love of my life here, this is home. There is really something special about the people in Sechelt. They talked about warmth, and they talked about love, and they talked about connection and community. They also talked about art. And I would bet that we would be considered the art capital of Canada, just from the number of artists that we have here and the number of art events that we have here. But it's more than that, because it's art in all things. Because we are so passionate about what we do, we find art in paddling. We find art in cooking. We find art in a lot of the things that we do because we do it well and we do it with passion. So now I'm going to pass it over to Bill, and he's going to tell you how we took that to build a community brand.
Thank you, Julie. I'm sold. I'm going to try to speak as calmly as Julie just did, and I'll try to slow myself down. The task force further defined Sechelt by answering a few questions. Questions like, what are our values? What is our brand voice? What are our brand attributes? And what do we value? And all those, the answers to those questions ended up forming the foundation and the basis for what we call a Sechelt community brand album. The thoughts and imagery in this album were inspired by the task force and the graffiti wall, excuse me, and that this will become the guiding document for those who want to represent Sechelt, whether it be through public art, advertising, banners, T-shirts, baseball caps, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to share a few pages in the album with you right now. For example, the brand attributes: adventure and play of every kind, a focus on culture and spirit, sustainability for self, community, and planet, enviable infrastructure and amenities, a healthy blend of locals and visitors, endless wildlife and natural beauty. This we own right now at Sechelt. Our values, as defined by the group, are individuality, creativity, spirituality, respect, community, honesty, safety, sustainability, health, and wellness. Excuse me. And our vision: to be a vibrant Sunshine Coast community where we all live our dreams, whether for a brief moment or a lifetime. And one more page from the brand album, our brand promise: you'll breathe easier. Now, this is not meant to be a tagline. None of these words you just saw will end up necessarily in advertising or on promotional pieces. They're used to guide people who want to, again, represent the brand. You'll breathe easier is really how Sechelt should make you feel. So if you live here, there's no doubt you're connected to Sechelt by maybe it's a view or family history or an item or an event. It connects you to Sechelt, and that connection helps you breathe easier where you live. If you're a visitor, it's how we want people to feel as a visitor when they come here. They want to breathe easier. And if you're a business owner, we ask you to ask yourself, how can I make my customers breathe easier through this experience and through this visit to Sechelt? Now, like Julie alluded to, who doesn't get off the ferry in Langdale, start breathing easier, and then when you're around that corner into Davis Bay, you're breathing much easier than you were 45 minutes ago. Now, brand album also contains all these beautiful words and nice thoughts, but it also contains graphic elements. One we're going to share with you is the Sechelt community mark, and it's brand new. You'll be the first group to see it. And before I show that, I want to talk about the concept of connection. Connections are what inspired this logo mark. And there are three, we all have our reasons for being here in Sechelt, but there are three common things that connect us to Sechelt and happen to be our natural amenities. One is sunshine. We are on the Sunshine Coast after all, and today is living proof of that, finally. Land connects us to Sechelt, whether it's the mountains or the valleys you like to thrive in, it's land. And it's also obviously about ocean. And not just ocean, but rivers and lakes and ponds and creeks. Now, this is the Sechelt community mark. Now, it is for the community, and I want to say that today it is just a logo, but properly used with the right messaging, it can become an icon of pride in where we live and pride in Sechelt over time. It's much like I Love New York became, it was owned not by a government or a corporation. It was owned by the people. It was their battle cry for their state. In this case, this would be our icon of pride. Now, we want our brand of the Sechelt community brand to be as diverse and flexible as the community is itself. So we're going to create secondary logos for businesses, corporations, associations like the Downtown Business Association. So you can see there's a common shape, common typography, but this would be specifically for that group should they want to support the Sechelt S brand. Our amenities like water sports, we could do a water sports specific S. We could also create one for events like Christmas. Further to this, we want to include and invite the community to create their own version of what connects them to Sechelt. First Nations people, the schools, companies, the general public will be invited, maybe by way of contest, to create their own S. They'll be given this blank outline of an S. What are the three things that connect you to Sechelt? It could be a potter, it could be a woodworker that does this. And maybe it's a contest and there's some prizing to happen as well. So that would be our outreach program. And, excuse me, these brand albums also have taglines. And we have a tagline that we love. I mean, believe me, it went around the room quite a bit. Taglines are a very personal thing, apparently. The task force spent a lot of days and hours trying to figure out a tagline that sounded believable and real. And we think we have one. And it's an expression that's been around. It's in the past, but we think it's never been more true than today. And it is the heart of the Sunshine Coast. Now, for three reasons, we can say this. We are a central location on the Sunshine Coast. There is an inherent warmth in the people and community of Sechelt. And emphasis on the word art, we are a very vibrant and growing arts community. And art expresses itself in some very expected and obvious ways, like glass blowing, dancing, pottery, woodwork, painting, fashion, carving, jewelry, writing, music, and on and on and on and on, and all here in Sechelt. But we've mastered the art of living, I believe, in Sechelt as well. For example, there is the art of cooking, the art of fly fishing, the art of sailing, relaxing, yoga, driving, coffee, and I've heard there's the art of shopping for groceries as well. I've had it explained to me many times. Now, and we could see ourselves as a brand. Thank you very much. As a brand, using that vernacular, the art of that. When you live in Sechelt, you'll connect us to Sechelt through your art of fishing, or your love of fishing, your passion. Now, I'm going to hand the microphone back to Julie, but I want to say one more thing before I do. Sorry. Having gone through this exercise with the task force has really, for me, was a great experience because it's reinvigorated and strengthened my love for where I live. I love living in Sechelt. I can't see living anywhere else, to be honest with you. And going through those discussions reinforced that. And it's our sincere hope that this album and what's inside it, the contents, will inspire those who love Sechelt the way I do and we do, the task force does, and start using this brand as an icon for their pride. Thank you.
Thank you. So now what? We have begun the process of trademarking the logo and the tagline. I am working on a policy and a license agreement because the District of Sechelt is the only organization in Sechelt that is 100% never going away. So we will own the trademark and we will own the license agreement so that when people want to use the logo in their business or for their organization and they want to get the graphic files, they will sign an agreement with us and we will give them the graphic files. There will not be a cost to it because we do want the community to embrace it. This is the community's brand. But there has to be an agreement so that it doesn't get misused, so that it sticks to what we've described in the brand guidelines. So that's a start. But then we can start using the logo. We can start using it in clothing. We can start using some of our secondary taglines, where life is what less work, breathe easy. We have a number of other taglines that we can use on t-shirts and postcards and things like that. It can also come to life in bumper stickers, banners, because that would be fun. Frisbees, just about anything that you can slap an S on, we can do. But it will come to life through our brand champions. We had an amazing group of people who formed the task force to bring us this brand. A number of them have stepped forward and said that they are happy to continue. And so what these brand champions will do is 3 things to ensure the success of this community brand. The first thing they will do is fight tooth and nail to keep politics out of the brand, because the number one thing that kills a brand is politics. The other thing they will do is invite investment of time and money into the brand, and they will push the agenda forward. They will communicate it and sell it and bring in more champions of the brand. And they will develop an action plan. Now, the task force identified a few things that we should have in an action plan, but the brand champions will take that and they will refine it and put timelines on it and put costs on it and figure out who's going to do what and how we can encourage them to do it. So some of the things that we've talked about for an action plan is obviously presentations to local stakeholders. This would be the first one, to encourage them to adopt the brand. Then also develop seashell marketing materials. We're going to need some frisbees and some t-shirts with the branding on it. Local promotions and contests. There should be really fun contests around the S. He was on the task force and he's got the t-shirt to prove it. A downtown action plan. There's a group of us who are already working on some things that we can do to revitalize downtown, but now we can incorporate the brand into that as well. Wayfinding signs. Fortunately, the Downtown Business Association was on the brand task force, and they are in the process of working towards replacing some of our wayfinding signs downtown, so those signs will reflect our community brand. Educate local businesses on the brand and its benefits. So we'll spend some time with our local business owners and showing them how they can use the brand as well. The district could use the brand as we look at our own policies, zoning, bylaws. What would it look like? If these are our values and these are our attributes, then what does a special event permit look like? What do some of our zoning policies look like? Branded promotional items, we need more of that so that we're visible everywhere, even on your lip balm. And a town plaza, we threw that in there extra. We think it would be really cool to have a town plaza, a place to feature some public art. So there you go. There is the Sechelt community brand mark, not the District of Sechelt brand mark. This is the community brand mark. You will hear a presentation from me a little bit later in the agenda on how the District of Sechelt might adopt this logo as our corporate logo or a variation of this. And now Jennifer's going to load a little video. This is only 90 seconds. This is going to be hopefully the first in a series of videos promoting Sechelt.
My background, and so I saw a great opportunity here locally on the Sunshine Coast to create a business that had a synergy between specialty outdoor retail, and provide excellent lessons, tours, kind of a rental livery business.
Kind of had a passion for cooking when I was younger. I went to culinary for a few years and then dabbled in and out of that, and so on. Life went on, and came out here, like Mayor said, seeing this place, and it was just a wonderful opportunity just to stoke up a little fire and ideas in my mind and share them with Mayor.
I walk my dog every day, and I get to give people good. Everybody has been super supportive. Clients,
She's got it, though.
city, businesses, everybody has been super supportive since day one.
Places all over the place. Competed representing Canada on the International Culinary Olympics, fancy places. I've done a lot, and I figured, okay, it's time to make a move, but here we are.
Great outdoor recreation and a good spot to raise a family.
Just the vibrant coast, the vibe of it all.
Good, honest food. And the story.
Well, sadly, it didn't really show very well.
It's very, very creative editing.
Yeah. But we will be putting it on our YouTube channel and on our website, and we're going to share it through social media later this evening. That is the first in what I'm hoping will be a small series of videos showcasing Seashelt. That one is a little bit about why a person might want to do business in Seashelt. And these people relocated to Seashelt to start up their businesses. So we thought that was sort of a great start to promoting our brand. And then we'll do some more on recreation and lifestyle and those kinds of things later. So anyway, that is the Seashelt's community brand. Thank you.
Congratulations. It was a lot of work. Yeah, it was a lot of work. I was invited to pop in briefly at one of the meetings. There's a lot of passion in the room. Lot of input from various, as you indicated there, various sectors of the community. So, I want to thank the people who took part, first of all. That was, they did it for the love of the community. So, thank you. So I'm going to turn over to council first. Any questions, comments? I love the hat. Eric?
I loved it. It was great. I love the logo. I love it's, you guys did a great job. I'm excited.
Toth.
Who am I? Yeah, as a brand, it looks fantastic. I gotta say, partway through the presentation, I was already thinking, what can I do with this with my business? So good job for pitching it that way and making it very approachable.
Anyone else? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I'll echo their comments. This is the first time that we had the chance to see this, and yeah, it hits you like the heart of the Sunshine Coast. It feels right. So thank you for putting all of the work into this, and looking forward to seeing where this could head.
Anyone else? I like what you said, where you said we want to distinguish ourselves from everyone else. So my husband and I moved here, right? Most of my family still live back in Alberta. And so over the years that we've been here, there have been short videos, etc., put together on Seashelt or the Sunshine Coast. And I'd share them with my family. And my kids have done a bit of traveling. And my son at one point said to me, Mom, most of these videos, they could be anywhere on the Sunshine, anywhere on BC coast. So what distinguishes Seashelt? So what you've done is you've taken, I mean, a phrase that I've heard before, the heart of the Sunshine Coast, but you've actually done that little tweak to it, which actually brings what makes Seashelt special out. And I think it's going to be a great way for us to play with that and bring the attention that Seashelt itself is dying for and very deserving of. So I look forward to working with this going forward. Thank you. Oh, where are our hats? Oh, she has. And she has buttons. Buttons. So, do the people in the gallery get buttons? I did not have a budget for hats for everybody. Okay. Oh, should I wear this?
Sure, go for it. You just might have to change it if you adopt a logo.
Okay, there we go. How's that?
Oh my God. It's so good.
I'm not a hat person. Okay, thank you. Oh, look at that one. Oh, look at this. Colored ones. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to put them out front here.
Knock the raffle one off.
Raffle it off, yes. Okay. All right.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're going to move on to proclamations, and we have a list of them today. We have 4 proclamations. The first one is a proclamation for Orange Shirt Day on September 30th, 2019. So whereas Orange Shirt Day is a legacy of the St. Joseph Mission Residential School commemoration event held in Williams Lake, BC in May 2013, and whereas Orange Shirt Day grew out of Phyllis's story of having her shiny new orange shirt taken away on her first day of school at the mission, and it has become an opportunity to keep the discussion on all aspects of residential schools happening annually. And whereas Orange Shirt Day is also an opportunity for First Nations, local governments, schools, and communities to come together in the spirit of reconciliation and hope for generations of children to come. Now, therefore, I, Darnell de Seegers, on behalf of the District of Seashelt Council, do hereby proclaim that September 30th, 2019 shall be known as Orange Shirt Day in the District of Seashelt. Our second one. Proclamation for Electric Vehicle Day, September 21st, 2019. Whereas internal combustion engine vehicles are responsible for a large portion of greenhouse gas emissions, which are a contributing factor to air pollution and climate change, and whereas adoption of innovative clean energy technologies, including plug-in electric vehicles, reduces our dependence on petroleum products, and whereas the District of Seashelt is committed to a livable community, a healthy environment, and a vibrant economy, whereas the 5th Annual Seashelt Electric Vehicle Festival is an opportunity to educate people about the benefits of electric vehicles and to promote their adoption. Now, therefore, I, Darnell de Seegers, on behalf of the District of Seashelt Council, do hereby proclaim that September 21st, 2019 shall be known as Electric Vehicle Day in the District of Seashelt. Proclamation, International Day of Older Persons, October 1st, 2019. Whereas the United Nations International Day of Older Persons celebrates the importance of the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and reaffirms the commitment to promoting the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms by older persons. And whereas in 2002, governments for the first time agreed to link questions of aging to other frameworks for social and economic development and human rights, and whereas the interdependence between older persons' social integration and the full enjoyment of their human rights cannot be ignored, as the degree to which older persons are socially integrated will directly affect their dignity and quality of life. Now, therefore, for I, Darnell de Seegers, on behalf of the District of Seashelt Council, do hereby proclaim that October 1st, 2019 shall be known as International Day of Older Persons in the District of Seashelt. And the final one, Proclamation Culture Days, September 27th to 29th, 2019. Whereas the District of Seashelt believes that community-based cultural celebrations enhance the connections between citizens of diverse interests, abilities, and cultures. And whereas as an annual national initiative, Culture Days connects individuals and creators, eliminates barriers, and stimulates understanding, appreciation, and exploration of arts, culture, and heritage, so that every individual in the country has a deeper connection with themselves, their community, and Canada. Now, therefore, I, Darnelda Seegers, on behalf of the District of Sechelt Council, do hereby proclaim that September 27th to 29th, 2019 shall be known as Culture Days in the District of Sechelt. All right, next item on our agenda is the minutes of the 7 p.m. regular council meeting of September 4th. And I'd look for a motion to adopt. Moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Thank you. Any business arising from the minutes? All right, we will move on to item 10.1. Please come forward, Mr. Craig.
Hi, my name is Jeff Craig, Chair President of the Sunshine Coast Community Forest. I'm here to present our second quarter financial results. As we haven't been active operationally, there's not much to say. You have it in front of me. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I thought I might take this opportunity to update you on the Wood Expo that happened this last weekend. We had just under 1,150 visitors to the Seaside Center. A little less than last year, but the weather was pretty brutal, and everybody enjoyed it a lot, and absolutely amazing. Some of the talented people that Linda finds who come to the event, and this might be the last one where we have the great organizational skills of Linda, but I'm hoping we'll be able to continue it on in the next years. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the operations report, but it's not much operation.
Okay, I wanted to just make a comment. One of the things that you mentioned in your cover page basically is around the structural protection unit.
Yes.
And I know that it was operational, and then very shortly, a week or two after that, there was the fire actually up in Pender, where it was actually deployed to the site. I don't know if it was actually used.
No, it wasn't used, but I believe it was taken up there just in case.
So timing was very good.
Yes.
Yes.
And then the season ended up a lot better than we might have hoped, so that was good also.
All right, any questions? No questions. Thank you very much.
Okay,
thank you for being here to present this. So move on to item 7.1. This is the minutes of the Airport Development Select Committee of September 6, 2019. So are there another number of recommendations in here? Are there any that anyone would like to pull out for separate consideration before we look at the group? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I'd like to pull out recommendation number 4. I'd just like a little bit of clarification on that one. And recommendation number 10.
Any others by anybody on the committee or the council? All right, so we'll look for a motion to adopt recommendations 1 through 9. So 1 through 3, 5 through 9. 1 through 3, 5 through 9. That leaves 4 and 10 out. Moved, seconded. Any question, conversation? All those in favor? Thank you. And recommendation number 4. Would someone like to move that to get it on the floor? Moved, seconded. All right, and Councilor McLean, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wonder if somebody from the airport committee could provide a little more detail on this issue, if there's a little more context. I'm not familiar with the issues.
Councilor Scott?
So the RA lease came due in December. They have a fairly large plot up by the West Hangars. And over the years, they've done a lot of work up there. They did a lot of the clearing in the land and set it up. The club has about 60 members. They utilize that area for parking of non-certified aircraft and some certified aircraft. They want to renew their lease in its current form, and they've put forward a bit of a proposal to build some T-hangars for membership on the property. There was some discussion as to how that fit within the airport development plan, and the committee felt that what was presented was not in the sense shovel ready, and we didn't feel it was readily funded. So in the interest of supporting recreational aviation up there, the committee suggested that we extend the lease 2 years to give them a chance to basically put the proposal together and get it ready to move forward with their project. And if they still after that period had not moved anything forward in the proposal, then we would revisit the lease size and give that land access to others to develop as needed.
Comment?
Yeah, and then a procedural question for staff. Would we be able to see the terms of this lease before agreeing to it? Because we haven't seen it at this committee, or at council. It's just gone through the committee. So I haven't seen the terms, so I'm not comfortable agreeing to it at this time.
I think that would come forward to council for approval, I believe. Yes, okay.
It was referred to the committee just to have a look at it as far as what the committee felt, how that worked in the overall airport plan. So as I understand, all the leases come forward to us, to council. So it was just recommended for a short term.
We didn't actually see the lease at the committee either. We were just looking at the concept, right? So yes, it'll come back here. Any other questions about this one? So there's a motion on the floor that we adopt recommendation number 4. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Recommendation number 10. Councillor McLean.
So this is a recommendation about the 2020 drag race plan, and the committee proposes ending it at 6 p.m. instead of 7 p.m. as they requested. I think we had this discussion earlier this year for the 2019 plan, and we suggested moving it back, and now the committee is suggesting moving it back forward. So I'd like to keep it later because they did have issues in 2018 with the later date and getting everything finished.
Okay, so I'll have a motion to receive this. Sure. And second? All right, and then Councillor Scott, did you want to address that? I think, yeah.
So the original approval for 2018 had the races ending at 5 o'clock. The group, of course, brought forward the proposals that they're potentially having challenges finishing by 5 and put forward the request to end it at 7. The airport operators, the commercial operators, were finding time constraints in having access to the airport. It was pushing them beyond their duty limits. At the committee, we had the benefit of having the drag racers up there, and we had a discussion with them about how often they were actually using it to 7 o'clock, and they hadn't. So we put forward maybe a balanced suggestion of making it 6 o'clock, and they seemed amicable for it. And we think that, well, there's airport operators on the committee as well that agreed that this would help.
I think the way you explained it to me at the meeting was that there's a 12-hour limit. So when you leave the airport, you have 12 hours. You have to be back within 12 hours. You might want to explain a little bit about that, because I think that's what really impacted this.
So in May of this year, Transport Canada changed the flight and duty regulations. And the regulations previously would allow pilots to work for 14 hours. Those regulations are changing, and they're bringing back the total work day that the pilots can work. So in this closure where it was a 7 to 7, they actually couldn't check in, leave the field, and come back within the duty day. So this allows for that. It's still at the outer edge, but.
Any other questions about the recommendation? Good question. All those in favor? Thank you. So next are the minutes of the Harbor Expansion and Development Select Committee. And there are five recommendations. Would anyone like to move those? First of all, any of those recommendations to be pulled? Would someone like to move them? Oh, did you want to pull one?
Yeah.
Which number?
I'd like to pull 3 and 4, so while I'm at it, I'll move 1, 2, and 5.
Okay, so 1, 2, and 5 moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Recommendation number 3.
Again, just on a process question, because we're getting used to this committee format, would this process be included in our capital budget planning for the next year? Is that what we're envisioning here? Because the non-motorized boat launch, this is the first time I'm hearing about this issue. It's on none of our capital plans yet.
So this piece actually was a number of the harbor users I know approached myself and Councillor Toth on lack of access for non-motorized boat launching in the harbor. There are members of the committee who are quite familiar with the challenges that non-motorized boaters have, launching kayaks and small sailboats and stuff like that. The Contiki Road and Burnett Road seem to be accesses that are preferred, that give reasonable access into the water. And for the community groups that are advocating for this, that's where the areas they identified as potential sites. And it sounds like I don't have a whole lot of history with it, but it sounded like in the past there was others that had pushed for it. And maybe Darnell, you have a little bit more back history on that.
All I know is that at some point in the past, these Contiki for sure has been available, and something happened that caused it to not be available to the community anymore. So the community's looking for some history on it, and why they're no longer accessible, and what it would take to make them accessible, or what the implications of it. Just some history around that. That's what we're looking for. All right, so let's move that. I don't think we moved it. Nope. Move that. Second. All those in favor? Thank you. And number 4. Let's move that first.
Move number 4.
Seconded? Yep. Okay. And Councilor McLean.
Trail Bay boat launch, is that not on the property of the Seashell Nation?
I think this is the one, that's not the one they're talking about one just down around west of the pedestrian pier.
Oh, I wouldn't call that a boat launch. But okay.
Yeah, they call it, there are people who actually use it as a boat launch.
Sure.
That's right. Okay, so you know what we're talking about, right? Yeah, okay. Any other questions? All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to item 8.1. First, a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And Mr. Hall.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have the rezoning application for a property out in West Seashelt from Bounty Developments. It's the last report you would have seen would have been back in February of this year, where there was a recommendation to deny the application. Council passed some motions, which I'll get into, but basically there was an original application to rezone a property from RR1 to R1 in order to facilitate an 8-lot subdivision with a minimum parcel size of 2,000 square meters. So back in February, staff ended up with a report that basically determined that the application didn't meet the OCP, that the current OCP designations for the property and some of the surrounding areas were problematic with the sort of land use designations that were applied to those areas. There was a recommendation to deny the application. Council didn't support that recommendation, and they made the following motions to direct staff to review and amend the secondary growth areas, land use designations, and urban containment boundaries in the community plan, and to refer the zoning bylaw application back to staff with direction to amend the OCP to facilitate some kind of rezoning application moving forward with the property. So we've been working internally and with the applicant since that time. We've come up with revisions proposed for the official community plan, land use designations, both for the subject property and some of the surrounding areas that were identified back in February, as well as proposing a new RR3, Rural 3 zone that would facilitate a 4-lot subdivision with a minimum parcel size of 4,000 square meters. That's more in line with sort of the rural residential designation that is kind of proposed for the OCP. And now we have bylaws ready for first reading and to move forward in the process. So under the OCP, the subject property is currently designated multifamily mixed residential. There's a property to the south, the Trails development, that has comprehensive development zoning on it that's also designated mixed residential, as well as a neighboring parcel. This land use designation in the OCP calls for a much higher density than is really deemed suitable for this area. There's no services, and even the multifamily designation kind of goes above and beyond what the CD zone contemplates on another property. So for the land use designations, the Bounty property would be redesignated to rural residential, and that would facilitate the Rural 3 zone that would get applied to the property, allowing basically the subdivision of 4 lots into 1-acre parcels. And then also at the same time, redesignating those neighboring parcels from multifamily mixed residential to low density residential and rural residential. So if you look here, we have the subject property here, that would be redesignated to rural residential. The surrounding land around here is all rural residential. This is agriculture. You have these blocks of properties here that is multifamily mixed residential. These would get redesignated, these 2 large ones, to low density residential. And then this one would also go to rural residential as well. And then under the zoning amendment bylaw, the property would go from the Rural 1 zone to a new Rural 3 zone to facilitate the application. So as part of that, the original proposal was for much smaller lots. We've come up with a compromise that is sort of more in keeping with the rural nature of the area. And part of that too would be considering a variance to road standards. Bylaw 430 basically has paved road standards across the board. So when we're looking at an area like this that is very rural, staff were of the opinion that a gravel road standard was more appropriate. It can have a lower level of service for maintenance, wouldn't be plowed in the winter, and it would also be beneficial for the developer as it lowers their costs for developing the subdivision. At the moment, there's a variety of different ways that we could look at the road standard and securing what we need as the district for the future in terms of maintenance issues, dealing with the potential future paving of the road. Staff have worked internally and with the applicant to kind of look at the issues about varying to a gravel road standard and what the implications are, what happens in the future if residents want to have a paved road or if further development comes to the area. At the moment, we're proposing that the district could take a security in the amount of $150,000, hold that for a period of 3 years against the potential future paving of the road, so that we would basically maintain the road at a gravel road standard with a low level of service. It wouldn't be plowed in the winter, and we can evaluate that situation after 3 years to see how well it works, if the costs are kind of rising for the district to maintain, or if everything's fine, with the goal that after the 3-year period, if no issues have arisen, the security can be returned. The idea being that if after the 3-year period, the residents are saying, oh, you know, this road is not maintained well enough, or our costs have been rising, that we have money set aside to cover the costs of paving that road in the future. That being said, council can also consider other alternatives to that. You know, it's basically coming up with a number of different mechanisms to say, how do we ensure that, you know, supporting the development moving forward while ensuring that the district isn't on the hook in the future for upgrades that may have, could have occurred in the beginning. So if the council didn't want to consider taking a security, then we could look at restrictive covenants, you know, limiting future subdivision of the property until such time as the road becomes paved. And that could be then contingent on potential future development in the area. Maybe the southern property, the trails development moves ahead. With higher density, they'd be on the hook for paving the road, or perhaps somebody else comes in with a rezoning application, and then we can revisit road standards at that time, looking at rezoning application and amending the covenant. So there could be a variety of tools to kind of cover off the road issues. At the same time, when we're dealing with rezoning applications, part of what the district is trying to do moving forward is coming up and being more consistent across the board in terms of rezoning requirements and community amenity contributions. So, you know, one thing to keep in mind when we're dealing with rezoning applications, council is assigning development rights to a property based on partly on what an applicant is proposing, but also, you know, looking at the current zoning, what they have development rights for now, but then usually assigning them more or different rights. So in this context that you know, a landowner only has development rights that have been assigned by council through a zoning bylaw, or additionally through a zoning amendment bylaw. So right now, the current zoning of the property allows for a 2-lot subdivision potential, or to have 2 dwellings if the property is larger than 1 hectare, which it is. So now somebody has applied, they're seeking additional rights that would allow them to create 4 new parcels over and above the 2 that they are able to do now. So when we talk about requirements in terms of affordable housing contributions or community amenity contributions, you know, we're really basing that in community, the OCP policies that talk about the objectives around creating affordable housing as part of new developments. Now, that may not actually be creating the housing itself as part of a new development, but looking at what kind of contribution can all new developments make in the form of land, units, or cash for affordable housing. So in terms of policy, using the tools that we have available under the Local Government Act to ensure long-term affordability, and giving council the ability to look at an application and say, okay, what is an acceptable requirement for this application for affordable housing? You know, should we be considering land or building units or cash, and what makes sense for this application? And then the same goes too for community amenity contributions, although these are voluntary, but again, backed up in OCP policies that for all rezoning applications, when we're considering new development, proponents should be offering community amenity contributions as part of their rezoning application proposal. So depending on the size and scale of the application, obviously the amenity contributions would scale with that application, but every application, we should be considering what kind of community amenity contributions are they offering. You know, could it be for a variety of different funds? Could be additional affordable housing, could be downtown revitalization, as we've suggested here, could be childcare, could be parks, could be any number of things. And the OCP policies list out a number of potential community amenity type areas. You know, when it comes to developments that are being proposed outside of downtown, one thing we've been thinking about a lot is all of those developments are still going to be using downtown. The people that are going to be living in those developments still going to be using downtown on a daily or weekly basis. So it would be reasonable for developments being proposed outside of downtown to contribute to a downtown revitalization fund to support increased services, increased density in the downtown, whatever it is that we want to use to help improve the downtown core. So that's basically it. It's basically we've got the rezoning application and the community plan bylaw ready for first reading, as well as some proposed requirements in terms of rezoning conditions and community amenity contributions as possible items for council to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Toth.
Just a small one, and I suppose it's more procedural in nature than anything. The $150,000 paving security that would be held, how does the return of that work at the end of 3 years if we choose not to use it? Does each lot receive a portion of that security back, or does it all go back to the developer after they've sold the lots and moved on?
Yeah, it would all go back to the developer.
Okay.
Councillor Lamb.
Okay, so this came before council back in February the 6th. And, you know, I don't have my notes or anything from that meeting, but I thought that the council gave a unanimous decision and direction to staff to move this to an 8-lot subdivision. So I'm just kind of wondering how we go from an 8-lot subdivision to a 4-lot subdivision, you know, with the direction of council. So can you tell me what happened there? Did the developer come in and say, I'd really like to have 4 lots instead of 8?
No, I mean, the direction from council wasn't specific to going back and making the 8-lot subdivision happen. It was more the recommendation to deny the application was not supported, and the direction was go back and work with the application, look at the OCP, recognizing that the multifamily mixed residential designation didn't make sense on the property, and that, you know, there was support for the area as a more rural residential area. So the direction wasn't specific to make an 8-lot subdivision happen, but let's look at this as making something happen, but supporting it, that 8 lots is too much in the rural area. That was the direction that we got.
Okay.
Councillor McLean, we'll come back to you.
Yeah, maybe the direction wasn't perfectly clear. I gotta say, I like this version of it. We made we're heading towards an OCP amendment with the new zoning, the RR3. It's appropriate for this lot. So we may have been unanimous in the final vote, but I think how we got there may have come from different places. I thought 8 lots was too much. I think this current proposal is right for the area.
So an RR1 zone, which is what it currently has, allows for 2,000 square meters per lot if it's not connected to sewer, correct?
The RR1 zone has a minimum parcel size of 6,600 square meters. The original proposal was to rezone it to R1, which would have a minimum parcel size of 2,000 square meters when on septic. So it's the difference between RR1 and
It is RR1, is it not?
It's RR1 now, like
That's
rural
right.
1, not residential 1.
Right, so if I read RR1, it actually is saying, make sure I'm getting this right. In the zoning bylaw? I'm in the zoning bylaw. Sorry, I thought I read it in, just read it in here. I thought it said 2,000 square meters. Okay, I'll have to go back to that. Other questions?
Sure. Okay, well, from reading this RR3, it says that in there that unpaved road surfaces are allowed. So why, if it's allowed under that zoning, why are we asking for $150,000 from the developer?
Part of that is thinking about the future in terms of how do we secure against, if down the line, if the residents start to decide, oh, we want to have a paved road instead of gravel roads, what do we do about that? Because right now the challenge is partly that the subdivision bylaw number 430 doesn't have a gravel road standard, so we have to vary that to allow this to happen, which I think staff are supportive of. The developer had been supportive of, but moving forward, we don't. Again, this kind of goes back to the workshop this afternoon. We don't have sort of an updated transportation master plan that really speaks to where in these rural areas we're okay with gravel roads and where we want to have paved roads. So there's always the issue that in the future residents will say, oh, we want to have a paved road, and then the district is on the hook for that. So the security is one mechanism to say, okay, well, we're covered for that for a short period of time. And then we can have the security returned, or we can look at other mechanisms through covenants or whatever to notify residents that you're in a rural area, this is the gravel road standard that applies, this is the maintenance level that applies, don't expect a paved road. So it's just sort of looking at different options for that, the security being the first one as the recommended approach.
Other questions?
Well, I've got a few, but, I mean, obviously, with a new council, our learning curve is huge, and understanding the bylaw 430, that how narrow it makes it for our staff to work within. So I'm just wondering, there's a few things here, but a park dedication, do they have to pay a park dedication or dedicate land?
They will, like any subdivision with 3 lots or more would have to dedicate parks. So that would be something we would deal with as part of the subdivision application. Okay. And then we would look at 5% as the statutory 5%. Requirement, whether it's 5% of the total area in land or in an equivalent cash value. Okay. Likely with this area, we'd probably look at cash. It wouldn't make sense really to have you wouldn't end up with enough park space to make it viable.
We've got lots of parks already. But, and so what is that 5% of what?
It's 5% of the total area of the land involved, or in terms of cash, then it's 5% of the, usually the assessed value of the land.
Okay. Okay. Anyone?
Any other questions from any other councillors? Councillor Scott.
Just want to go back to this, the paving allowance. So in theory, then we can approve this, have it subdivided. The developer can sit on the property for 3 years and not sell it and get that $150,000 back because there hasn't been a requirement for it, in theory. For the first part of Acorn Road, what's that? Oh, it is. So that 150,000 takes it right from Gowland?
Yeah, that would be from Gowland to the western edge of the property.
Okay. And so that part of Acorn's not paved right now anyway?
No.
Have we had any issues with it?
Not really.
Do we not run a snowplow down there in the wintertime ever?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Any other questions? Sure. Councillor Lamb, something.
Why not? I'm on a roll. Been saving up. Yeah. So you're asking for a low-cost housing or affordable housing amount. So what do you have you got an idea what you're asking for that or what?
I mean, that's down to council's discretion. I mean, I think what we've been working from for other rezonings that are a little bit more intensive development, looking at sort of the 20% of the total units involved as the starting point. That being said, again, it's to look at all rezoning applications and say for the smaller scale ones, does that 20% still make sense? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. We've been working to try to establish the 20% of the total units as kind of a baseline moving forward. But again, that's up to council to decide. Is that enough, too much, not enough? In terms of smaller applications, it's more just recognizing that this should be a requirement as per OCP policy for all applications. Whatever the amount is, that's up ultimately for council to decide, but that for all rezoning applications, there is a requirement under OCP policy for affordable housing contributions in some form, in some amount, and the same for community amenity contributions. It's something that should be considered for all applications.
I didn't get much sleep last night, actually. So anyways, I'm just, with this low cost and affordable housing benefit, the money, it doesn't come out of the developer's pocket. It's a flow through. So it's, if you put $10,000 on a lot, the developer has to mark the lot up $10,000. If it's a lot with a house on it, the low cost amenity is minimally $35,000, but probably very close to $500,000 or $50,000, sorry, on a residential house. And who pays for that? It's not the developer. It comes back to the guy that's out there working. Him and his wife have, worked hard to save their money. Somehow they've got their money, their down payment. It's a $50,000 hit on the guy's mortgage. And, we're looking at affordability. So if you took $50,000 off a guy's mortgage, it'd make it a little more affordable, maybe. But, I just, for myself, I've just been looking at this for a while, this affordability, and I think there has to be a better way of getting it, because, you take a 12-lot subdivision, and 2 of those have to be affordable. So you get the other 10 players, the other 10 buyers that pay for that affordability. And so, I'd just like to see Shelt work towards, I don't mind, I can see you going at the developer for X amount of dollars per unit, a small amount, and then, find a different way of accumulating that money, and especially in a downturning economy that we have, that it would be nice if you could say, hey, Seashell, every year we've got $100,000 to put into affordable housing so you can move forward. Every year you've got that. And with the economy we have right now, we don't know what we're going to get. So I'm just finished for right now. Let somebody else.
Thank you. Councillor Toth. Oh, sorry, did you want to go first? Okay, Councillor Toth.
I'll be quick, I promise. I have to disagree with Councillor Lamb. I think that a developer that does a subdivision will sell the lots for what the market will bear. If they can sell a lot for $100,000, I know it's more than that, but if they can sell a lot for $100,000 and it costs them $60,000 to develop it, they're still going to sell it for $100,000. If they can sell a lot for $100,000 and it costs them $20,000 to develop it, they're still going to sell it for $100,000. That's just my take on that side of things. I take issue with the $150,000 security, because the developer puts that out. They're going to be collecting that in the land that they sell, and the costs are going to be coming back to them to cover that. And at the end of the 3 years' time, they'll either get that money back or they won't, but they'll have still recollected it from the 4 lots that they've subdivided and sold. There's got to be a better way. I just don't know what it is yet, and I'll keep thinking about it while other people talk.
Okay, so I'm just going to make a point and then I'll go. So yes, I understand they'll sell the lot for $100,000. Unless the cost to develop that lot is $120,000 and he can only get 100, then it just won't happen. Which I think is I think that's where Councillor Lamb's coming from. Where are we with the costs that we're putting on this, and does it make it actually not financially viable for this developer to move forward? So over to Director of Planning.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Councillor Lamb, I appreciate your comments. It is a tough decision for all of us to have, both council, staff, as well as the applicants, undoubtedly. What we are attempting to do here is advance policies contained within the official community plan, contained within the council strategic plan respecting advancing affordable housing. So just to provide some context as to where and why these comments are coming from, would remind that at this point we are in consideration of first reading, so the decision must not be made this evening. There continues to be time to talk about it, both at this table and between us and applicants. We are seeking direction on this. What I can say is that we have put in preliminary thought and research, and I know it's on the work plan, to provide a policy, a framework policy for this type of development, so that it makes it easier for council, for you folks, as well as us, having these discussions to know what expectations are, so that we're not trying to come up with it on the spot in a council meeting each and every time. So we will be pleased to provide something in the future, which may, to be determined, occur before this particular bylaw amendment comes back to the table. So just wanted to just provide some context, and thank you.
Councillor McLean.
Yeah, that's great news. I'd like to commend staff for working on a standardized set of community amenities. This uncertainty doesn't help anyone. So if we can just be clear about what we're asking for, we know what we're asking for, and developers know what they have to give. It just makes everything so much simpler. I want to comment on the issue around the gravel road. In my mind, it should just be a gravel road. End of story. It's what we're doing right now is giving them a gravel road and say, you might have a paved road. That's, who doesn't want a paved road? Everyone wants a paved road. But what we can do is give them a gravel road and say they have a gravel road. It is what it is. It's appropriate for this development. And if the property to the south would like to develop, they can pave the road at that time.
Any other comments, questions? Councillor Kuster.
I want to say I agree with Tom's original statement about the 8-lot subdivision. I was under the impression that we were thinking that was a good idea, more affordable units, if a developer can do, they're still rather large size, half acre, and give the community an extra 4 affordable units for, I think that's the way we need to go looking forward. So I like the original proposal from the developer.
Any other comments? Looks like we're gonna have fun getting through this one. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, okay, so once again, the RR3 zoning only allows for 1 home. And I think, what do you call it, an extra unit or something like that, you know, so they can, these are fairly big lots. And so can we make it so they can have a second dwelling on them?
It's something that we can consider. I mean, in the other RR rural zones, there's been a minimum parcel size of 1 hectare in order to have a second dwelling. So it would be a change in terms of the direction that the current rural zoning is going to say for, okay, in this particular property, for a property that has less than 1 hectare, they could have 2 dwellings. Again, it's something that we can consider. I mean, usually the issues around that are, rural properties are likely on septic, potentially even on wells, although if they're smaller than 1 hectare, they're likely not on a well. So it's something to consider, but just in the way the RR3 zone was drafted was based on the way our existing RR zones are, and that they've only allowed a second dwelling when the parcel has been larger than 1 hectare, or 10,000 square meters.
Again, sorry. I think, and I'm just thinking that Vancouver Coastal Health would probably be the ruling authority. They would specify the septic size and if the ground was acceptable for that, I mean, that would be one of the authorities. That's one. But, I once again, the staff has a huge, we're changing process. I mean, the big deal is you got a brand new council. How many members of the staff have changed hands in the short period of time that we've been here? And then we want to get moving on with this rezoning and everything. So I realize there's some struggles here. So I hope that, the staff's kind of getting a bit of general direction from us that we'd like to see things move ahead, and we need to make some changes, obviously. And we're looking at affordable housing and how do you put workplace housing? How do you put somebody can build a house and put a rental unit up or something like that. So we need all this stuff in our community.
Any other comments? Sorry, I thought that was flashing over there. I had a question in the actual bylaw before we get there. Schedule A, this is on page 43. So it's saying the maximum height of a single-family dwelling is 8.5 meters. So that would be 2 stories? Is that correct? 2 stories? And then the maximum height of an accessory building is 5 meters. So that would be 1 story. So there would not be the ability to have a carriage house, for example, on here. They couldn't have a garage because of the accessory building.
Well, a carriage house or coach house or laneway house or whatever you want to call it wouldn't be classified as an accessory building. So we would, if we wanted to allow that use, it would be a discrete use in the permitted uses section, and then we would probably have a separate maximum height for cottage or coach house or whatever it is. So you would have height of a single family dwelling is X, height of a cottage is Y, height of an accessory building is Z.
So we've got R3 zones. So what you were saying in here is you could have a single family dwelling with a secondary suite, only a 2-story building. So the secondary suite would have to be attached to it or something, or basement or whatever.
Yeah, the suite can be anywhere in the house.
Right. Okay. But it's 1 acre lot with 1 dwelling, basically. What do we do elsewhere in the municipality if we've got a 1 acre lot? What do we allow? It depends on the zoning, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, there would be...
It's on septic?
For the residential zones that are on sewer, that are...
Right. This one isn't on sewer, so on septic.
Yeah.
What do we do on septic?
Well, that's where like the other rural zones have the 1 hectare requirement for an additional dwelling.
Okay, and if it wasn't rural zone?
Then a lot of the residential zones do allow additional dwellings, maybe on parcels that are 2,000 square meters or larger.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, and no more questions? You finished your list? Get it out, whatever else.
Okay, well, I got one more question then. Okay, so when this application, I believe, I mean, obviously we saw it on February 6th or something like that. So when was this application first brought to staff? Would it have been in, I don't know, December last year, or was it
It would have been before then. I don't recall the exact application date.
You weren't here.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they would have submitted the application before I started. But,
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So there was some staff turnover in between when they applied and when I started.
There's been some staff turnover. Yeah. Okay. So, I know for myself, like I'm just like there's been a tremendous amount of work put into this, obviously, because it was received, it was started, it's gone from an 8-lot application to a 4-lot to whatever it is, and now, it's a 4-lot subdivision. So, I guess the big thing is, like, I would like to see this thing move forward. Whatever we come up with tonight, I would like to see us see this thing back, put some focus on it, and let's see if we can't get it back for first, or for second, or get it to the public hearing in October sometime, so we can get moving. It'd be nice to see things move ahead. Thank you.
That would be our intent as well.
Thank you. Are you finished your list? Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Kuster, did you have anything else?
I just have a quick question. So the developer they've come forward and they're okay with the 4-lot subdivision, or is this just something we've proposed and?
Well, staff had thought about it initially and then proposed it to the developer, and we've gone back and forth on it, and we have been generally in agreement that the 4 lots is an acceptable approach, predicated on the gravel road standard being having the complete package that as a rural development, the 4 1-acre lots with a gravel road seemed to make sense to everyone. It was when it was going from a potential of 8 lots down to 4 lots with a paved road, and the requirements to pave all the way from Gowland to the western edge of the property would be making it financially challenging with potentially a reduced number of lots. So, I think we've spent some time internally and working with the applicant to come up with the 4 and gravel package that would everyone seems to be acceptable of.
Sorry, I'm just getting my head around all these different pieces we're looking forward to. Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, I think what we should do is take these one piece at a time. So there is a recommendation that council give first reading to official community plan amendment bylaw number 495-25 2019 bounty. Now, this is not just for the bounty land, correct? Okay, so this is for the land, the bounty land, but also the land below it, and another piece above to the left. Okay, so that is the recommendation. What would council like to do? Councillor McLean, first moved and seconded. Any comments on the giving first reading to official community plan amendment bylaw? All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, so number 3 is that council give first reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 25-301 2019. So that is as, let me go to that page. That would be on page 41, correct? Yep. So this is saying we would move it from RR1 rural 1 zone to RR3 rural 3 zone. Now, when we get to there are some questions about some of the conditions in that. When we get to it, we're just saying we're going to give it first reading. We haven't actually given it first reading. We could make any changes we wanted at that point, correct?
You can even make changes after first reading. First reading is just really introducing the bylaw. We'll send it out for referrals again. When we come back for second reading, we may either propose changes or council could propose changes at that time without having to go back to first reading. So it's really up until the public hearing, we can make whatever changes we want.
So would someone like to move recommendation 3? Moved and seconded. Any comments? Question?
So again, not again. The OCP amendment applies to the properties to the south and to the west as well, which is to the west. The zoning amendment applies only to this particular property. The one to the south remains CD and the ones to the west remain whatever they are. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. So, number 4, that staff refer the application to relevant stakeholders, agencies, and the Advisory Planning Commission for comment. Moved and seconded. Any comments, questions? All those in favor? Thank you. Number 5, that council endorse the following as minimum conditions of the rezoning application to be met prior to adoption. And we're going to do these one at a time because it sounds like this. So A is that the applicant provide a cash contribution and amount to be determined for the Affordable Housing Fund. And are you looking at council to make that, to indicate an amount at this point, or what are you looking for us to do?
At the moment, we're looking more just for support for an amount of some kind. You know, we can work with the applicant to talk about more about that, bring it back to council, and everyone can think about what kind of an amount would be makes sense. It's more just support for this is a requirement.
Okay. So would someone like to make that recommendation? Moved and seconded. Any comments? Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I'd just like to say right now that this should not be in the 20% range at all. So I hope when you're talking to them that we're talking a reasonable number, let's put it that way. Thank you.
Councillor McLean?
I'd just like to say that 20% is reasonable.
So I have to side with Councillor Lamb on this one. I mean, if I look at what the costs of some of these are, I'd like to see the lots come on the market. And I don't want us to price them out of the market. So, I mean, I don't know what that number is either, but I lean more towards Councillor Lamb than the 20%. Councillor Todd.
And I'm going to side with Councillor McLean. However, we're not here to figure out the exact numbers. Staff will work that. They'll come back. We can agree or disagree and debate it at that time.
Yes. So we have on the floor that the applicant provide a cash contribution and an amount to be determined for the Affordable Housing Fund. All those in favor? All opposed? I'm going to oppose that for this small, yeah. No, that's fine. B, that the applicant carry out works on Acorn Road to bring it to a modified gravel half rural road standard from, is it Gowland Road? To the eastern edge of the subject property at the unnamed road as indicated in the bold yellow line on the map in attachment 1. That didn't actually show up on our map, I think. Okay. Would someone like to move that one? Moved. Seconded. Any comments on that one? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I'm not going to be voting for this. I'm going to put together a alternate motion if this fails, that it just simply be paved or be gravelled.
So I think that's what we're doing here now, isn't it? Modified gravel half rural road standard?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, the language in there is because the bylaw 430 subdivision bylaw talks about a rural road standard, but it's not a gravel road standard, so it becomes a modified standard, and there'll be a variance around that. So
basically, it says it's a gravel road.
The outcome is a gravel road.
Okay. Any comments on this one? And we moved in second. We had to move. Okay, we were in seconder. All those in favor? Okay. Does anybody want to move item C?
I'll move it so we can talk about it.
Okay, moved and seconded. Comments?
Make me talk about it. I think we just need to be clear in our expectations for any potential homeowners moving in here. We can do that by saying that there's a gravel road and that's end of story. So I won't be in support of this motion.
Any other comments? Councillor Rowe, down at the end.
She speaks. I fear I'm going to break into a coughing fit, so I'm not very talkative tonight, but I agree with Councillor McLean. I think we're giving false hope here, and it's just asking for 3 years down the road somebody to email council and wonder when their paved road is going to come in. I think gravel road is appropriate, and I think that's what the homeowners should be told, and if that's through a covenant or however it needs to happen. That's what I'd like to see, so I won't be supporting this $150,000 option.
Any other comments? Councillor Toth.
I also won't be supporting it. It's a gravel road. It should be a gravel road. That $150,000 is going to be recovered by the applicant when they sell those properties, just in case they don't get the money back at the 3-year mark. So I don't think we should bother asking for it in the first place.
Any other comments? All right, so we have a motion on the floor that the applicant provide a $150,000 security in the form of an irrevocable letter of credit to be held for a period of 3 years that would cover the cost of potential future paving Acorn Road from Gowland Road to the western edge of the subject property. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thanks. So it's unanimously defeated. Thank you. Then we have one more here. That council endorse the following as community amenity contributions of the rezoning application to be met prior to adoption. That the applicant provide a cash contribution in an amount to be determined for the Downtown Revitalization Fund as the proposed development is outside the downtown core. Councillor McLean, moved. Seconded. Any comments? Councillor Lamb?
Do we have any idea what this contribution would be?
No idea.
Nope. It's for us to talk with the applicant about and see what they want to propose and what council wants to consider.
So it would come back to us and... Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor McLean?
Yep, I'm going to be in support of this. It's we're providing value to the developer by allowing them to build more units. The community needs to benefit from this as well, and this is a good way to do it.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Any opposed? And would you like it recorded? Thank you. Recorded? Thank you. All right, so now we can move to the actual bylaw. Let me get there. So we're going to page 38, item 8.1B. This is bylaw number 492-25-2019, Bounty, being a bylaw to amend District of Sechelt Official Community Plan bylaw number 492-2010. And is there anything in here that we need to make modifications now based on, no, there's nothing in here based on the votes we did before, correct? All right, I'd look for someone to do first reading or move first reading. Moved. Is there a seconder for first reading? Seconded. All those in favor of first reading? Thank you. So that would then go out for public hearing.
Correction, it would go out for referrals.
Sorry, out for referrals, right,
yeah.
sorry. Correct. Item 8.1C, District of Sechelt bylaw number 25-301-219, Bounty, being a bylaw to amend District of Sechelt zoning bylaw number 25-1987. Moved, seconded. All right, any changes we want to see in this bylaw before we move it forward? This is where it talks about one single family dwelling and the heights. No comment? Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, I'd like to see us give him the opportunity to put a second dwelling on.
So that would be under permitted uses, it would be single-family dwelling, and then, what, secondary dwelling, 2 houses? How do you,
Yeah, the lots, I mean, the lots are fairly
dwelling per
big, so.
lot. Okay.
The lots are fairly big, so I mean, if it meets with, Vancouver Coastal Health and whatever, I'd go for two lots, or 2 houses, and maybe we could restrict the second house to 1,000 square feet or something like that.
Councillor Toth?
If we just change that from 1 per lot to 2 per lots, are you then also able to have secondary suites in both of those buildings? So are you now talking about 4 units on that land?
Yeah, I mean, you would so I guess the issue to consider is what form that second dwelling unit takes. Is it a full single-family dwelling in addition to the first one, in which case it could also have a suite, and then you'd have 4 dwelling units? Or is it just a question of, do we want the secondary dwelling unit to be a cottage or carriage house or some smaller form of second unit that doesn't have a suite? So you'd only end up with a total of 3 dwelling units between the house, the suite, and a accessory dwelling unit of some kind.
Councillor Toth?
I saw Councillor Lamb get excited when I mentioned 2 secondary suites. Something to consider, though, is that we just said that we want this to be a gravel road. And so 4 lots, each with 4 homes, 16 units of housing. If each household has 2 cars, that gravel road's not going to hold up very long with our minimum maintenance. Just a thought.
However, if I may, thank you. I was just going to say it's about striking the right balance between increasing the density over the present zoning and decreasing the service requirements that bylaw 430 presently provides. So that I'd just like to keep that in mind, and we can draft the bylaw in certain conditions, density bonusing or whatnot, but I would suggest a parcel size on an acre with 2 houses without a clear distinction between primary and secondary, respecting size, etc., would likely lead to further subdivision pressure 5-10 years down the road, perhaps. Perhaps this road will be paved at that time due to other applications. However, if we're going to go that's I think why we selected suite within a dwelling, because it clearly identifies there's a principal dwelling with a suite. So if perhaps there's some scope to expand that suite to a cottage, but I would be hesitant to suggest 2 full and equal primary dwellings in this type of scenario. Thank you.
Sir Toth?
I would suggest that we move it as it is and see what happens at the public hearing.
Okay, any other comments? Councillor Scott?
I agree with Councillor Toth. I think we can move this one forward.
Any other comments? So we have, okay, so I'm losing track of where we are here. We have moved, and we had a seconder for the zoning. Yes. First reading of the zoning bylaw, yes, thank you. Yes. So this is for 25-301, 2019. Thank you. Any other comments? Any recommendations? Councillor Lamb?
I'm just going to say, I'll vote in favor of this, understanding that we can move it. We can get the feedback from the public, and then we can make our changes.
Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor? Thank you. All right. That one's done. Whew. Item 8.2A, and I think Councillor Lamb, were you going to excuse yourself for this? Okay. Sure.
I just want to thank the planning staff for the work that they've done in bringing forward another new zone that has relevant applications on parcels. Thank you.
So we're looking at zoning amendment bylaw number 25-288-2, 2019, cannabis. First, a motion to receive the report. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you.
I can start anyway. Okay, so we've got the cannabis zoning amendment bylaw. It's kind of been a long road to get here, but the bylaw is ready to be considered for adoption, second, third, and adoption. All the way through the purpose of the bylaw amendments have been generally to define and update terminology. There's been obviously a lot of updates to federal regulations, changes in terms. So our zoning has to be updated to reflect that. A key piece for this bylaw, and one that is probably the highest priority to get adopted, is the retail provisions for cannabis based on the policy that was adopted by council earlier in the year. The zoning regulations basically flow from that. There's been, prior to the second public hearing, there was some changes that were proposed, but since the public hearing, there's the cannabis retail regulations are the same. There haven't been any provisions changed, and everything's kind of in line with the policy as adopted, looking at in the C2 commercial zones and the downtown and Wilson Creek areas, and then looking at modifying cannabis use requirements in the industrial zones and in the ALR. And those are the sort of the two areas following the second public hearing that we were looking at for possible regulation changes. So in terms of cannabis retail, there hasn't been any changes since the last public hearings. Nothing was really brought up at the public hearing, and no changes were proposed as a result of that. When it comes to cannabis cultivation, production in industrial zones, we've looked at, based on comments from the public hearing, and looking at revising setbacks and minimum parcel area regulations specific to industrial zones. And then for cannabis cultivation in the ALR, looking at better aligning our regulations with the provincial ALR regulations, which involved deleting certain regulations around the minimum parcel area and replacing that with a maximum number of licenses per parcel, as well as revising various setback regulations. And I'll get into those details later. To keep in mind, following a public hearing, the Local Government Act lays out the parameters under which council can consider changes to a zoning amendment bylaw. And we can basically look at changes to regulation as long as they don't alter use or density. And that's basically what staff have considered based on feedback from the public, looking at changes to cannabis regulations that don't alter use or density. And so the proposed regulations that we've revised, we believe fit within the parameters under which the local government lays out for the public hearing. So looking at industrial areas, revising the minimum parcel sizes to both allow cannabis across a wider range of industrial lands while still protecting smaller industrial parcels from potentially being taken over for cannabis uses. So not opening the door to cannabis across the board to all industrial lands because it would be able to outcompete any other non-cannabis use. So thinking that I'll get to the specific regulations, but looking to set a minimum parcel size that still allows cannabis to occur on most of the industrial lands, but protecting parcels under 3,000 square meters from that use, so that welding or other businesses that we would want to see in our industrial lands aren't squeezed out with a cannabis gold rush, as well as ensuring that, again, we're opening the door to cannabis in more places. So this table here kind of shows from the existing regulation, which is the current zoning in bylaw 25, what was previously proposed in advance of the public hearing, and then how we have revised that following the public hearing. So we've kind of gone from setbacks from schools, gone from 1,000 meters to 150 meters, and based on comments from the school board, increased that setback from 150 meters to 300 meters, while decreasing the setback for buildings from a parcel line from 100 meters to 50 meters. So that, in industrial areas, all these fully enclosed buildings are going to have pretty good odor control. The federal regulations are quite strict around odor control. So in an industrial area, it doesn't make sense to have really large setbacks when everything should be in place for managing odor and everything else. In terms of minimum parcel size, for both standard cannabis uses and micro cannabis uses, we're basically brought to the same minimum parcel area for now, decreasing from 4,000 to 3,000 for cannabis and increasing from 2,000 to 3,000 for the micro cannabis uses. Again, speaking to the protecting those smaller parcels under 3,000 square meters, of which we have a fair amount still in Sechelt, ensuring that those aren't taken over for cannabis use and left for all the other industrial uses that we would still want to support, while still enabling cannabis across a large range of industrial parcels. When it comes to the agricultural land reserve, it's been a bit of a moving target. The provincial regulations have changed over the last few years, as well as also within the last year, specific to cannabis and the ALR. And we're constantly been working to align our regulations appropriately with the provincial level, as we are required to do. And that's involved a number of regulatory changes since the public hearing to better address those issues. Looking at, again, sort of setbacks and some of the changes around moving from minimum parcel size to a maximum number of licenses, and still maintaining that prohibition on non-soil-based cannabis facilities or dark facilities, given that the ALR regulations allow soil-based cannabis production, but have left it to local governments to choose whether or not they want to prohibit the dark facilities. And we're recommending that we maintain that prohibition. Such facilities really aren't suitable for agricultural lands, even sort of marginal lands, as they're very purpose-built facilities that once constructed, are not easily converted to other agricultural uses. So it's really intended to protect agricultural land from further industrialization. So what we've got, under the current zoning and the previously proposed zoning, we had a 5-hectare minimum parcel size. That's been proposed to be deleted. And then that would be replaced with a limit on the maximum number of licenses that could occur per parcel. So it allows parcels that are smaller than 5 hectares now to have cannabis cultivation on them, which is more in line with provincial ALR regulations, while still limiting the extent to which cannabis can occur on the property, a limit of 1 license, whether standard or micro, whatever it is, and then, depending on the type of license, a maximum gross floor area for all buildings and structures related to that license, to limit the extent and the footprint of this use on the property. And then changing the building setback from the 50 meters to 100 meters. This is more around, again, odor issues, but from the opposite direction, where as a farm use, regulations provincially limit the ability of local governments to regulate odors on agricultural land when it comes to normal farm practices. So there could be an issue in the ALR where the odor controls that you would see in industrial lands may not be applied to buildings in this area, where it's still kind of unclear how the federal regulations will actually apply there. So having an increased setback will help to offset some of those issues. At the same time, deleting the setback from schools and from residential zones to basically enable the cannabis cultivation use on a wider range of properties in the ALR, but limited through the gross floor area and the maximum number of licenses. So again, this has been through several public hearings, the final one being the last sort of opportunity to hear comments from the public on the proposed zoning amendments. And now the bylaw is kind of ready to be considered for second, third reading, as well as potentially adoption. it's been through a bunch of different revisions, but staff are of the opinion that kind of where we are now is a good benefit for the district. We've really improved the regulations that have been proposed, as well as over what's currently in the district in terms of making cannabis use available on a larger number of industrial properties and better aligned with ALR regulations. And then noting that, once these regulations are in place, any future development looking either at the ALR or elsewhere would be a site-specific rezoning application, so that's where there would be an ability for council to consider in those so-called dark facilities in the ALR if somebody were to propose that. And then that's something that council consider on the site-specific basis and look at all the requirements therein, the issues, proving out the agricultural capability of the lands, and again involving community amenity contributions and other things where such an industry, for on a back of the envelope calculation, one micro licensed facility could be generating $8 to $9 million a year. That's looking at community amenity contributions that should be in the $1 million range. And if you're proposing more than one facility, then we're getting into amenity contributions that should really be in the tens of millions of dollars range. So that's considering the benefits that could accrue to the district through the rezoning process by assigning such development rights. So anyway, the bylaw is ready to be adopted, and that would allow the district to respond to the referrals, this cannabis retail referrals that the province has been sending. So that's definitely one of the highest priority pieces that we'd like to be able to respond based on adopted policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Quick one, Councillor Toth.
I know I had a question at one point about being able to give second, third, and adoption in one meeting. I wanted to thank the corporate officer for getting back to me at 9 o'clock at night with the answer on that one, but could you just... It's okay, none of us have lives. But could you remind us, about the applicability of this?
Certainly, through you, Your Worship. So the question is basically procedurally, given given the rule that everyone knows that there should be 24 hours between third reading and adoption of bylaws, how can council give second, third, and adoption? And it's actually under section 480 of the Local Government Act, which says, despite section 135(3), at least one day between third reading and adoption of the community charter, that section of the community charter, a council may adopt a zoning bylaw at the same meeting at which the bylaw passed third reading. So basically, all bylaws require that 24-hour, regulatory bylaws, etc., require that 24 hours period in between, except for zoning bylaws.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Kuster?
Yeah, I just have a comment. I'm really torn here with this bylaw. I know we have some retailers waiting for this bylaw to go through. Although there were some definitely positive changes, I think we missed the boat with the ALR lands. We're wanting to support economic development in the district, and we have opportunity to change the bylaw in the beginning to support that. And so in that aspect, I think it's a little bit of a miss. At our public hearing, we heard from some local residents bringing forth a positive use with the micro-cannabis facility and the use of the ALR lands. And so for me, it's like, why don't we just get it right from the beginning and look at all that now, as opposed to try to coming back at future. And I think it's just a huge miss and such a great economic, could be a potential economic development for our community, and I think we need that. And so in that reason, I think I'm not going to support this today.
Councillor McLean.
Okay, so let's talk about economics. This is a fairly restrictive bylaw, I'll admit that, in terms of growing cannabis. However, there's a lot of money out there in cannabis right now. There's a lot of people who want to invest in cannabis. And these people are going to buy up our land. They're going to buy up the land and force out our industries, force out our farmers, and hopefully they develop it into cannabis farms. But they may not. So what we do here is we make it restrictive, and we can change it as the cannabis industry evolves. But this time we open the door, but not so wide that it affects our whole community. We can grow cannabis here, we can sell it, but I don't want all of our land being bought up to grow cannabis.
Councillor Toth.
I'll also be supporting it today. I think a person who has a plan to make it work can come forward and present something to us about changing it, about updating it to make it work. We do have referrals that are waiting for us to get back to them. And honestly, I'm kind of looking forward to an S logo with the art of cannabis.
Any other comments? I agree with both of you, right? I know that this bylaw has been through a lot. It came forward for first reading, regulations changed. After we did the first public hearing, we had to go back and redo it again. Then there was another change, and we had people in the community come forward with information around ALR and micro licenses that we haven't necessarily responded to. And I do agree that there's an opportunity. But I also know that we've been holding up the retail establishments a long time. I don't know how long, it's months and months and months that these referrals have been to us. We gave them a 2-year temporary use permit. Some of them have closed down. I've been hearing about it that we've done that. We've closed them down. They still could operate under our temporary use permit, but they've been told by the province that unless they close, they don't have a license, it could detrimentally impact their application. So I think we need to get this moving forward so that we can actually have these retail establishments open and be available, provide product to people in our community who want them. Do we need to come back and revisit it? I believe we do. But I also think that we need to have somebody who's a serious contender, somebody who's got a serious proposal to come forward so that we have something we can look at, potentially doing spot zoning. One of the things, because of the short time frame that we had to look at this, we did have staff look at being able to change the zoning as required for certain areas where people have expressed interest. And there would have been an impact also in West Sechelt for other areas that we wouldn't necessarily intend for it to happen. So we didn't really have the time internally, I don't believe, to do the due diligence, the work that needed to be done so that we could actually control where it went. So at this point, we invite, I think this council is very much willing to entertain micro cannabis facilities as have been proposed to us. We haven't seen any. We'd like to see them come forward. At that point, we can come back and revisit for those particular sites. So I think we'll see both, but I think at this point, it's a great step moving forward for our retail establishments. So I'll support it. Councillor Scott.
I'm not a big fan of bureaucratic process. But in this case, this is the best way for us to work to protect the ALR land. And if there is land out there that's in the ALR that shouldn't be classed that way for whatever reason, this allows for us to look at options around it. It creates more of that bureaucratic process that I hate, but I think this is the safest way to move forward, and I'll support it today.
Any other comments? So there are 3 recommendations on page 45 that we give second reading to the zoning bylaw, second, third, and adopt, basically. Zoning bylaw amendment 25-288-2, 2019, cannabis. And that's moved and seconded. Any other comments? All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Would you like that recorded? Yes, please. Okay, thank you. So let's move to page 50. Item 8.2B, District of Sechelt Bylaw Number 25-288-2, 2019 for cannabis. A bylaw to amend District of Sechelt zoning bylaw number 25-1987 regarding cannabis cultivation, production, and retail sales. And would someone like to move first reading? Moved, seconded? Sorry, second reading, second reading. Moved and seconded, all in favor? You can tell I'm getting tired, it's been a long day. Okay, so that's second reading. And opposed, would you like it recorded? Okay. Third reading, moved, seconded, all those in favor? And opposed? Thank you. And adoption, moved, seconded, all those in favor? And opposed? Thank you. And we are finished with that one. Thank you. Okay, while you're doing that, we're going to actually stand up and take a 5-minute break. We've been sitting here for over 2 hours. Thank you. All right, we're going to come back to the agenda, item 10.2 on page 69. First a motion, this is a development permit for a Sunshine Coast campground in Wilson Creek. First a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Please go ahead, Marina.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is an application for a development permit for the purposes of constructing a new 12-room motel in the Wilson Creek area. So the location is 4314 Sunshine Coast Highway near Field Road in the Wilson Creek neighborhood. The property is zoned commercial 3, which does allow for motel uses and campgrounds, among other things. It currently operates as a year-round campground with tenting and RV sites, and it was previously known as the Wilson Creek Campground, which seems to have been around since the late 70s, the 1970s. The official community plan designation is tourist commercial, which fits in with the proposal. Okay, so what we're considering tonight, there's 2 development permit areas that affect this development, or the development affects the development permit areas, and it's watercourse habitat of Wilson Creek and flood hazards. So Wilson Creek and its streamside area has high fisheries values. It also has a potential for flooding, bank erosion, sudden shifts in creek channels, and the like. You can see the red or the yellow area is a 200-year floodplain. It merges with the Chapman Creek, floodplain on the other side. Oh, sorry. The impact of the proposed development has been assessed by qualified professionals in their fields of study, and after working on several versions of the reports, staff is satisfied that the development permit area guidelines have been substantially met for creek habitat and flood hazards. The other development permit area is for form and character of the building. So this is a commercial development permit area outside of downtown. So we're looking at things like site design, low impact development and sustainability considerations, the landscaping, screening of the waste area and signage, lighting on site, use of natural materials, that it be pedestrian oriented, parking considerations, that it have an inviting entrance, and things such as the building massing, the height, the roof lines, and the architectural interest. The proposal is, so it did actually come through 2 sort of major versions. The first proposal was to renovate the existing building, but the applicant came back with, well, they had some issues around the flood construction level. The existing building is too low, and the accessibility requirements for the 2018 BC Building Code didn't allow for their proposals, so they came back with a new building. So they would be demolishing the existing pool. So you can see there's a swimming pool there, and this is the existing footprint in the colored lines. The new proposal is the gray area here. So it's all outside of a 30-meter setback line from the creek, so they're not going to be coming close to the creek area. They're going to be constructing a 576 square meter 12-room motel plus 1 manager's suite. And this would also include campground, washroom facilities, and breakfast dining area for motel guests. They're proposing 13 parking spaces, and as far as the the site, they would retain mature trees and not develop in the creekside area. And they've proposed landscaping as well, which I'll get to. This is the architectural rendering showing their proposal. The building massing at the front. So this is existing. You've probably seen it driving by the highway. And this is what their new building would look like. And the back view as well. This is just showing the elevations from the east and the west. By the way, the drawings show the building as this green color, but they are proposing an evening blue color that fits our development permit guidelines. This is the north and south elevations. And as far as landscaping, they did provide an arborist report, and there's 9 protected trees. There's a lot of mature vegetation on the property, and they're not proposing to take any of it down. So those trees will be fenced and protected during construction. And the landscape plan shows details about on-site lighting, which is downcast. There are parking spaces, which are permeable pavement. They have a screened waste collection area, which is an improvement over what's there now. And it would include recycling as well as garbage. They have showing bike racks and a bike shed. They're proposing about 595 drought-tolerant plants in their landscaping and a rain garden at the south sort of end of the property where it's low to capture some of the stormwater. And the cost estimate for their landscaping is almost $100,000. Okay, as far as servicing, they're on SCRD water. The applicant's been working actively with the SCRD to identify leaks on their property and to deal with those. The waste collection area would be improved, and they're proposing to make it wildlife resistant. There have been bear problems on that property in the past. They will be putting in recycling, and they're upgrading their existing sewage treatment system, which has a current provincial permit, but they're proposing to upgrade it to include the new motel use. So one of the things that we needed to make sure is that we're not approving a development without the appropriate on-site septic system in place. So they have not received their provincial approval for that yet. So that's one of the conditions in the proposed development permit. Our bylaw 430 requires some sidewalk improvements along the frontage as well, and that's been dealt with, or will be dealt with at a later stage. So the staff recommendation, this isn't the exact wording, but it's that council approve development permit 2018-37 and the related conditions, one of which is a prior to issuance of the permit. So if you give approval before it gets issued, they would need to show their discharge authorization from the province for the on-site septic system, which would serve the existing campground uses plus the additional 13 units, which is the 12 rooms plus 1 housekeeper's unit. And we are proposing to put a timeline on that for September 1st, 2022, which is adequate time to get their permits in place from the province. They have done, they had a qualified professional that prepared a detailed septic report, and that's being considered right now by the province. The rest of the conditions would be to adhere to the plans and specifications that would be attached to schedules, and that's the architectural drawings, the landscape plan and cost estimate, the arborist report, the riparian assessment letter, and the geotechnical assessment and plans from the engineers. The Advisory Planning Commission made a recommendation for wheelchair accessibility in the washrooms, so that's included. that they provide a landscaping bond in the amount of $99,960. No disturbance to the streamside area, that they install fencing and signage to delineate and protect that area during and after construction, and that they provide monitoring reports from qualified environmental professionals to confirm that their works are not encroaching into the creekside area, and that the color scheme for the new motel buildings is in accordance with the Development Permit Area 9 guidelines. That's the end.
Thank you. Any questions? Statement, Councillor Toth.
I was actually at the APC meeting where they were first looking at this, and I want to commend the applicant for coming back with some changes. I know that the APC had concerns about the screening of the crawl space area of the building, and I see that's resolved, as well as increasing roof lines to cover stairwells so that you're protected if you're coming in and out in inclement weather. And I see that they've made those changes, and I think it'll be better for it.
Thank you. I have a question about the actual permit. So if we look to page, it's 99, 100, and 101 in the package. Okay, so on page 100, and through your report, you indicate that the Ministry of Environment could take up to 36 months to actually approve their septic system, right?
Yeah.
So on number 6, we said, if discharge authorization is not approved by the BC Ministry of Environment by September 1st, 2022, this development permit shall lapse, right? So September 1st, 2022. Go down to number 15. So here we're saying if construction for the development permit does not substantially commence within 24 months of the date of issuance, this permit shall lapse. So we've got a conflict here, right? One is 36 and 24. Director of Planning, Mr. Allen.
Thank you. That 24 months would kick in upon receipt of confirmation from Ministry of Environment. Thank you.
Thank you. So the conditions will have to be met before it can kick in, and then they have 24 months.
Thank you. Yes, it's correct. It's an unusual circumstance in this regard due to this potential significant delay. And we didn't think it was fair to send the applicant on their way to the ministry, wait 36 months and come back and re-propose, and folks have no longer remembered what this is about. We felt it was fair to give them some assurances that this could go ahead. Thanks.
Right. So not knowing that piece, I read this and said, okay, they can't do anything for 36 months potentially, so we're gonna give you 24 months and we're gonna cancel it. So it's good to know. Any other questions? Councillor Toth.
I know it was discussed a little bit at the APC, but was there any consideration given to any sort of a left turn slip lane or anything like that coming out of Seashelt? I mean, if you go there, you drop off, you set up you drop off at the motel room, you want to run into Seashelt, you're coming back, you can't turn left.
So there was some discussions with the Ministry of Transportation, both like the applicant contacted them and through our referral process verbally when we meet with them on a regular basis. We did discuss this one, and the Ministry of Transportation really isn't expecting any change. It's turn right in and turn right out. That's all they're going to allow for that one.
And there is another way to get into it if you're coming from downtown Seashot, correct? You turn at the lights and then behind the mall, and you can actually get in going that way, correct?
Yeah, there appears to be an easement road at the back that they share with the mall property.
So there is a way to get in. It'll probably have to be properly signed potentially to make sure that people know.
At this time, we haven't requested them to do that, but I could look into that.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, so we have a recommendation number 2 that, okay, moved and seconded that council approve development permit 2018-37 for Sunshine Coast Campground Group Limited for Lot A, reference plan 564, Group 1, Northwest District, part in Plan 22354 DL 1029, PID 010578625 with civic address 4314 Sunshine Coast Highway and related condition as attached to this report. All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you very much. Next item. District of Sechelt brand refresh and logo change. I wonder who's going to speak to that one. First, a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Ms. Rogers.
Thank you. I have copies of the brand album here if anybody is interested in them, and I will leave them there. So as I said earlier, a successful community brand has all of our organizations paddling in the same direction. Why does that look so funny? No. Could you advance it please to the next slide and just see it? Oh, that's the oddest thing. Okay, we'll leave it up that way instead of going full screen, and then we won't get those weird lines in there. Oh, and now it's done it again. Well, you get the idea. Yeah. I'll try and distract them. So this report recommends that the District of Sechelt adopt a version of the logo that would be the municipal logo. We're one of the organizations in the community that communicates the most in a lot of ways with, signage, letterhead, envelopes, website. We're the most visible with our communications. So for the district to adopt the logo will really help to advance the brand. And I know that there is a history in Sechelt or with the municipality of a little bit of logo drama. So I'm hoping to just move past all of that. We currently, every time a council adopts a new logo, and then the next council comes and they're like, that council had made a terrible decision. And they try and get rid of it. But nobody wants to spend the money and do it right. So as a result, right now in our community, we have 4 different logos out there. And so we need to figure out who we are and what we look like. So I'm proposing that we adopt a new logo. It's really hard to tell. There's 4 different options on there. These are 2 of them. So with the S and District of Sechelt to the side in 2 different ways. Oh, there, see? Oh, you can see it without the weird lines. Oh, God. And then, or with the District of Sechelt below it, or Sechelt and the word municipality as instead of district. We could go with any of those 4 or a variation of. I'm recommending that we transition to the new logo over 2 years. I have the money in my budget this year to do some of the things that we need to do. And next year, there's actually some changes I plan to make to the communications budget that would see some cost savings. So I'm recommending that I do the rest next year without requesting any additional budget, just using assuming you're going to let me roll over the budget that I have now to next year. I would be able to afford it out of next year's budget. So I'm not looking for a tax increase to fund the logo, but I think this is a new look for the District of Sechelt, and it's a look that we can be proud of and makes us a part of this community brand. I look forward to your feedback on that.
Thank you. Any comments? Councillor McLean.
I'd like to move a motion to defer this to the next meeting. I don't like deciding things right on the spot, and today is the first time that I've seen this logo.
I kept it a secret.
So I'd like 2 weeks to lay on it, and we can discuss it at the next council meeting.
Is there a seconder for deferment? Second? No discussion? All those in favor of deferring to the next meeting? Okay, and that passes.
And I will make really nice copies of the logos, and I will send them to all of council by email so you can consider them.
Comment?
Yeah, just real quick. I came into this meeting thinking, what are we doing? We have a logo. I learned today that it's considered the bacon and eggs logo. I still like the logo. I'm pleasantly surprised with this. Yeah, as you say, there has been drama in the past with logo changes and updates and things like that. And so I look forward to the discussion in 2 weeks' time.
Another thing that I should point out with this logo that I'm not sure Bill and I mentioned is Sunshine Coast Tourism also participated in the task force, and we adopted the color scheme from their branding so that we can begin to create a unified look across the coast with all of our branding, that there's just a little bit of similarities, so you still know that you're on the coast, but we're going to make sure that you know you're in Sechelt.
Thank you. So item 10.4, this is a request to amend policy 2.8.1, permissive tax exemption. First, a motion to receive the report. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Mr. Douglas.
Thank you, Your Worship. This amendment is due to the fact that staff have a further report here recommending more than 1 year to pass permissive tax exemptions to some properties within the district of Sechelt. So we currently have policy 2.8.1, and within that policy we have one section or one paragraph that basically states that permissive tax exemptions will be granted for a period of 1 year, and council will consider longer periods of permissive tax exemptions for a maximum of 10 years on a case-by-case basis. The community charter allows council to pass permissive tax exemptions for up to 10 years, and just as a matter of efficiency and in governance, you know, I'm somebody who would like to take advantage of that, and I'm not recommending going out to 10 years, as we'll talk about in a few minutes, but you know, this policy doesn't stop us from going further, but you know, I just like to bring it to what the community charter says, which council will consider approving permissive tax exemptions for up to 10 years.
Any questions? I have a question. So what happens if something changes?
So the applicants will still have to apply each year, and as changes come through, we will just amend the the bylaw that we're recommending. So we would bring back a bylaw amendment next year if a property has to come off, and same if a property has to go on.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor McLean.
Just to clarify that past point, so currently we have a long list of properties. Moving forward, we pass it all for a period, and if any changes, we'd probably have a much shorter list to consider every year.
Correct. Only anything that changes.
Any other questions? Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Toth. And seconded, that council approve amending policy 2.8.1 by removing permissive tax exemptions will be granted for a period of 1 year. Council will consider longer periods of permissive tax exemptions for a maximum period of up to 10 years on a case-by-case basis, and replacing with, council will consider approving permissive tax exemptions for up to 10 years. Comment on that. When, I believe it was when we did the Lions housing facility over here, we actually did give them a 10-year time span, and then we had to approve it every year because we had a bylaw that did that, or policy. Yes.
I know that they were passed for a longer term.
Yes.
At the time, yeah.
Yes. All right. Any comments, questions? All those in favor? Thank you. And our next item is 10.5, permissive property tax exemptions. Motion that the report from the Director of Financial Services regarding 2020 permissive property tax exemptions be received. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Mr. Duffus.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report introduces the 2019 permissive property tax exemption bylaw number 585/2019, and seeks council's approval for a 4-year permissive tax exemption period. And so this is basically your term. And so you wouldn't see this bylaw come back again unless there are amendments to it. Under section 224 of the community charter, it identifies situations in which council may exercise discretion in granting partial or full exemptions from taxation for specific properties. These exemptions must be adopted by bylaw no later than October 31st of the year preceding the exemption. So these exemptions would be from 2020 through to 2023. Most of these properties that are on the bylaw have been on the bylaw for many years. There have been 2 changes to this year's bylaw. 2 properties actually came off. There's a property that belongs to the Bethel Baptist Church that was a child care daycare center that is up for sale at this point and up for rezoning, I believe, as well. So it becomes a holding property for that group, so it's no longer able to be permissively exempt. And the Legion was sold recently, and that they did not apply, and so that one has come off. Included in my report is some of the financial information as to what kind of exemption you're looking at providing to these organizations. And although the municipal tax portion in 2020 is $242,000, the overall exemption you're really giving is for all taxes. And so for 2020, I've listed it there for 4 years, but starting in 2020, it's $555,750 estimated amount of tax that is you're giving permissive on. And then further to that, behind that is the bylaw that we're looking to have approved. And once this is approved, we'll be advertising for 2 weeks in the paper and coming back for final adoption.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. What about the RCMP and Justice building?
Those, as far as I know, those 2 buildings are statutorily exempt, so we don't have to approve those.
Okay.
It's the same with any regional buildings within the area and federal government.
The BC Housing apartment building?
The High Tide property?
Yes. Yeah.
Is that, I would say they're not, I'd have to research that one. I'm not sure on that one.
Okay.
They're either not exempt or they're statutorily exempt.
Okay, thank you.
So in other words, they're not on this list at this point. Okay. The other 2 buildings you mentioned we own? Mm-hmm. We own. Mm-hmm. So.
Do we pay taxes to ourselves?
No. The Legion recently purchased a new building. They would need to get that up and running and then apply to be able to be for permissive tax exemption?
Yes. I'm not sure when they're leaving their existing location and heading to their new one, so.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions about any others? So there's a recommendation on page 129 that 2019 property tax exemption bylaw number 585/2019 be read a first, second, and third time. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Now let's go to the bylaw. So this is District of Sechelt 2020 permissive property tax exemption bylaw number 585/2019, a bylaw for the purposes of exempting certain lands and improvements from municipal property taxation for the 2020 through 2023 taxation year. I'd look for someone to move first reading. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Second reading? Moved and seconded, all in favor? And third reading? Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you very much. And we are on to funding for Sunshine Coast Affordable Housing Society. This is item 10.6 on page 141. Motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded, all in favor. Thank you. Just a note, it is 20 to 10. We have basically 20 minutes to finish the meeting. Thank you. Or we have to pass a motion yet to extend, yes. Mr. Douglas.
Thank you, Your Worship. So at their last meeting, we had a representative come to council looking for a cash contribution to the Affordable Housing Society. And in doing some research on through either policy or bylaw, there wasn't a mechanism written or approved by council as to how one of the funding sources, or the only funding source that we have, is our affordable funding or affordable housing reserve. And then in research, I looked through policies and other bylaws, and there isn't really a definition of what those funds have been collected for, or more specifically, how they're to be released. And so it's so I think we need to wrestle that one to the ground first, and have council approve what types of projects or what types of avenues that these funds can go towards, because it's really affordable housing. When you collect the money, it's all about units, and I don't mean we get units. We either get cash or we get some kind of allowance towards units. And in this case, we have a reserve with $63,000 in it, and we just need to define how we want to put the money out to the community. And the Affordable Housing Society is an avenue that has been really active in the last year and a half with regards to local affordable housing. And that's just one avenue. There's a host more. So really the recommendation from staff here is to refer this back to staff, and we're going to put together a reserve fund bylaw, and within that bylaw, a definition of how the money can be pushed out and for what reasons. And so that would be, so when council approves that, that gives us really our definition of what types of expenses, what kinds of projects, what kinds of things council would like to see this money go towards.
Thank you. So the second recommendation is that we refer it back to staff, or basically direct staff to investigate this. But then the third one is that we forward a request for 2020 funding from the Sunshine Coast Affordable Housing Society in the amount of $50,000 to the budget process. So that doesn't mean we're necessarily going to approve that. It means it will be part of the deliberations during the budget process. Correct.
If council resolves that, funding a society's operations isn't what the money is to go towards, then we would have to look at, a different funding source for their request. I don't think we have much room in the 2019 budget for their first request, but the 2020 is a new budget year, so we can have it sitting there trying to figure out how we might look at funding it.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Councillor McLean.
So my concern with the discussion on this so far is that we won't have a quick decision. I think during our election last year, housing was one of the top issues. It's one of the ones that the community looked to us to take some action on. A year later, we haven't done much. It's a capacity issue. It's really hard to change policy and get movement going what this does is helps us add capacity to the whole affordable housing community. They're looking to hire some staff, and we can do this now, or we can do this in May after the budget is passed. That's another half year away. It's another half year of people living without homes, people living struggling to get by. Whereas we could start taking action now instead of delaying it another half year.
Director Douglas.
My intention is to have a bylaw at the next council meeting for your consideration. And that would define what council sees as the proper means to spend this money. We've already done some research, and you know, some of the funds that other communities push out are very specific, and some are a little more general. So at this point, you know, collectively, staff do not know what council wants to do, if they want to fund like operations or really use it towards real, you know, units now.
All right, so any other comments, questions? Councillor Toth.
If we go forward with apportioning them any funding for this year or looking at the options budget process for 2020, is there any plan at your level to communicate and coordinate with the town of Gibsons or the regional district on making sure that their request, their portioning, I want to make sure that we're not kicking in all the money for them to do work in Gibsons, is basically my concern.
Yes, the week after they were here, they presented in Gibsons, and I haven't heard yet what Gibsons has resolved there. But I will keep in touch with them.
I hear your concerns, Matt, but I really think that these recommendations address those concerns. They're going to move things forward. So I'm going to move that we option 2 and 3.
Is there a seconder? Seconder? So the motions are that council direct staff to investigate and prepare a bylaw that includes guidelines for awarding affordable housing reserve funds on affordable housing initiatives, and forward the request for 2020 funding from the Sunshine Coast Affordable Housing Society in the amount of $50,000 to the 2020 budget process. So question, if the bylaw comes forward, next meeting, we look at that, we still at that point could look at taking $10,000, for example, from the affordable housing reserve at this point and awarding it this year yet.
Yes, you could do it before the bylaws adopted or after.
Right, but we're looking at now is getting some kind of guideline framework, yes, in place for how we use these funds. Okay, thank
Absolutely,
you.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions? All those in favor? Thank you. And did you want to comment? Councillor McLean.
I'd like to move another motion that a draft version of the bylaw be forwarded to the town of Gibsons and the SCRD for yeah, let's stop it there.
Thank you. As their seconder? I'll second that. I mean, just for their information, basically. Yes, I'll second that. Comment?
Now, I know what Councillor McLean's trying to get at with the affordable housing initiatives or the housing reserve funds. The way I heard you speak, though, are you talking about bringing something forward for all of the reserve funds, or is it just the affordable housing fund?
The next meeting will be the affordable reserve fund.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that for my own.
So there's a motion on the floor to forward the draft bylaw to the other municipalities. And SCRD?
Yeah.
Yes, just for their information. All those in favor? Thank you. Give you something to talk about at your next meeting. Councillor reports. We're going to keep this very short. So we're going to go in this order. Councillor McLean, Councillor Toth, and then Lamb, et cetera, and we'll work our way down the, so, Councillor McLean.
I have nothing to report.
Councillor Toth.
Also nothing.
Councillor Lamb.
My meeting. Oh, yeah, I'll go through it. So I'll start off with the SCRD. The planning meeting, we had 10 motions come forward. So next week we spend at UBCM. It's a Union of BC Municipalities. It's a meeting in Vancouver. And board members were chosen to speak at each of the motions. Squamish-Lillooet Regional District is initiating an update to the regional growth strategy. And as we are their neighbor, they've just sent referrals to the SCRD. I guess we've had some documentation come to the SCRD from Modi with regards to active transportation, and it was just received for information. Contract was given for replacement of the Zamboni at the Seashell Ice Arena, and it will be an electric machine. Wood waste hauling and processing contract was given to Sailor Soils. And then an approval of a letter going to Minister Hyman with regards to the Clean BC Plastics Action Plan policy. And you can find that information at cleanbc.gov.bc.ca/plastics. And then one of the big discussions we've been talking about quite a bit is the holding people responsible for their abandoned vehicles and boats and motorhomes and stuff like that. So we're working on a policy towards that. Also, back to the District of Seashell. So we have a Water Resource Select Committee, and we had our first meeting September 11th. We started off with a tour of the complex, and some of the strategic things that we have to work towards is the need for a long-term water strategy and a long-term supply. Paul Nash gave us an overview of the volume of septage going through the plant right now, and started us just thinking about the use for reclaimed water. One of the recommendations going out was to the SCRD to get more and better information out to the residents. Yeah, good enough. And then the next meeting will be October the 1st, Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. That's me. I don't know yet.
I think it's in the basement of Rockwood.
That's what we were hoping for, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Basement of Rockwood. Councillor Scott.
So Harbor Committee, Airport Committee, the minutes were in the agenda today, so I won't touch on those. I'm going to shamelessly promote that while it is Electric Vehicle Day on Saturday, the Sunshine Coast Air Cadet Squadron is holding their 4th annual All About flight up at the airport. There'll be static displays of airplanes. Cadets have all sorts of displays on, and there's all sorts of raffle draws, and there's a raffle for kids. I think it's 10 to 12 to go for a helicopter ride, free hot dogs. So far more fun than looking at electric cars. So bring your kids and grandkids up to the airport from 11 till 2 on Saturday.
You do both.
Thank you. Councillor Kuster.
The only thing I'm going to mention is that I attended the SPCA Pause for Cause, and my puppy ate way too many treats and had way too much fun, and that's it.
It's a row.
I went to Nashville for a week and got sick. I'm home. Really, yeah, it is a country song, I won't say. Really looking forward to UBCM. next week, and I think in total, out of all the local governments, there will be 25 of us there. And I'm not sure that's ever happened before, so I'm really looking forward to it. We have a whack of ministerial meetings, and it should be very informative. So that's it.
And hopefully we're all speaking to each other by the time we come back. Yes. Number of things that have happened over the last couple of weeks. I just want to mention a landfill tour. One of the things that the regional district is starting to turn their attention on is the landfill and the fact that it's getting to a point where we need to have some kind of plan in place for when it has to close down. I also attended a seniors planning table meeting. The age-friendly plan that we got funds for and the resource center used a couple of years ago came out with a bunch of items to be completed by various parties. District of Sechelt had some, regional district had some, etc. The seniors planning table recognized that one of the things that they were responsible for continuing on with was looking at the impact of isolation in Canadian older adults, because they're finding that there are older adults who are isolated, but nobody knows who they are because they're isolated. So there are ways to get access to who they are and bring them back into being part of the community, because once they get isolated, it starts impacting health, it starts impacting, their lifespan, all kinds of things. So they came forward with their report. It was presented at this workshop. This is a good group of people who are providing services all up and down the coast. So the next meeting, they're going to be looking at how do they actually find these people, given there's confidentiality rules and things. So other than that, council's working with staff on some of the foundational documents in the district, the liquid waste management plan, we did that. We did a workshop today on some beginning work on bylaw 430, which is our subdivision and development control bylaw. Staff are doing lots of work behind the scenes. So that's it. That's all I'm going to say. Councillor McLean?
I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting until 10:15.
Is there a seconder? All those in favor? Okay. Then we adjourn the meeting. You'd rather adjourn the meeting. Okay. So let's move on to item 12.1, release of items from closed meeting. Like a motion to, I'm not going to read those out. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. So those were items that we had discussed in closed meeting, and they're just being released at this point. Council correspondence, move receipt. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Are there any of those that we'd like to discuss, move forward? Two of them are letters that have already gone out. Any emergency items? Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Thank you.
That was my extension.